Welcome back, Ultimate Weapons. It's the Night Sky Prince again. Dissidia Final Fantasy NT is a game that has been met with some fairly mixed reactions. While fans are glad to have finally gotten a console Dissidia game, as they've always dreamed of one since the PSP days, that day finally came earlier this year. But fans still seem to be skeptical on the game. I see many people wondering if they should pick the game up now or when they see it on sale, which is pretty frequently. So honestly, is Dissidia Final Fantasy NT really that bad? I can't help but think, no, it's not. There are a lot of valid criticisms of this game, and things that Square Enix and Team Ninja should definitely address. That said, I can't help but find many of the criticisms of this game to be slightly dumbfounded. Starting with one of the more common criticisms, the story. Of course, the story is not that great, but did anyone actually find the story of the original or Duodecim that compelling? They did have their great moments, and the world map used in Duodecim was pretty awesome, but nothing about them was absolutely groundbreaking. But realistically speaking, does anyone actually pick up a fighting game for the story? I suppose I'm in the minority here, but I certainly don't. While I understand there are people who did enjoy the story modes of past games, part of me actually really ended up enjoying the game in the format that it was already in. I was able to play through several multiplayer matches and never have to touch the single player mode if I didn't want to. I bought this game because I was sold on the idea of a competitive multiplayer Final Fantasy game. I simply wanted to go straight to playing multiplayer matches online, and I really didn't want to bother with anything else. For people with that competitive angle in mind, it actually made the game far more accessible for their enjoyment. That said, Dissidia NT in quite a few ways is a departure from the original PSP series. Dissidia NT is a console port of Dissidia Arcade, with Square having the arcade version of the game there to make revenue while they continue to develop the game and add new fighters to it. And honestly, when you play Dissidia NT, much of the arcade roots are still quite apparent. Because this is an arcade game at its core, NT lost the majority of the RPG elements that were incorporated into the PSP games. While this actually distraught many players, I actually thought this was a pretty great idea. Essentially, instead of focusing on grinding for items, unlockables, or any type of power-ups, this brings the game back to a clear focus of mastery of the game mechanics. It gives the game sort of a pick up and play feel to it, allowing more people to find the game accessible. After all, the original PSP games didn't really have a strong online focus, and if you lived anywhere outside of Japan, you basically couldn't play the PSP Dissidia games as an online multiplayer game at all. With most of the world only competing against the computer, I think that it's left some people with a highly ideal notion of how good the gameplay balancing was in the first two games. 3v3 matches are part of the huge departure from the former series structure, with 1v1 battles, where the original Dissidia focused on two characters battling it up. Dissidia NT decided to focus on a party structure, with the developers citing that they wanted the structure of combat to feel like a traditional Final Fantasy party, where you typically have 3 party members. While this is often cited as an area of criticism, I have to personally disagree entirely. Unlike a game like Super Smash Bros., where large-scale fights can often be super hectic and chaotic, especially on smaller maps, all of Dissidia NT's maps are designed from the ground up to be able to house a consistent total of 6 fighters. And while I love 1v1 battles as they just feel so much more personal, the team-based combat is where this game absolutely shines. There are 4 core classes in Dissidia NT. Vanguard, who are heavily a melee class, Assassins, who are lightweight and quick response fighters, there's Marksmen that use long-range magic attacks, and Specialists, who are a unique class and can't be directly categorized. The balance of your team can have a great influence on your party's victory or failure, creating a greater deal of depth for competitive play in structured tournaments. During every match, you also find a wide variety of opponents and playstyles. Instead of just getting matched up with one person who is completely OP, or conversely, underskilled compared to you, you have 3 different fighters to target, oftentimes experiencing a wide level of player skill and tactics just within a single match. This adds a great deal of variety and unpredictability to matches, as I've been both cornered and made a huge comeback, as well as been far ahead only to have my team completely crushed in the end. Summons, which merely appeared as a graphic icon that appeared in the original, are now fully rendered in beautiful detail and do devastating damage, sometimes completely turning the tide of a match. EX skills also add a huge level of potential strategy to the game. One of my favorite EX skills being Doom, which give an enemy target a 10 count to strike for someone's brave points. If they don't, then their brave instantly drops to 0. If your team uses this properly, they can drain an opponent with 4,000 or greater brave, who can one-shot just about anyone on the map at any given point, giving you an opportunity to neutralize them in yet another way, instead of trying to do a quick knockout or drain them of their brave points. The controls, however, do take a bit of getting used to for veterans of the PSP game. games, but if you've never played those before, you really don't have anything to worry about. While it took me a long time to get out of the habits of muscle memory from Duodecim, once I did, I found the game's controls were not bad at all. In fact, anyone accustomed to the feel of Kingdom Hearts games, but more specifically Kingdom Hearts 2, will feel right at home with the Dissidia series. NT is a game that does have its flaws, and trust me, I am well aware of them, but I fundamentally and respectfully disagree with anyone who says the game isn't fun at its core. In fact, I would even agree that the full $60 price tag is probably too much, considering that for the most part, this is a multiplayer online only game, and without it the game does feel pretty lackluster. But if you can get this game for $30, you won't feel bad about the purchase at all. And so many people just highlight the negatives of this game that I really wanted to talk about some of the positives of this game too. It's really just not all that bad. Though as a side note, PlayStation Plus is almost definitely something that JRPG fans don't want to fork over extra money for. I really think that if they released this game on PC for skin mods and free online play, that would definitely help rejuvenate its appeal. But what do you Ultima Weapons think? Do you think that Dissidia NT is a pretty fun game despite the fact that they really need to add Tifa into it? Or do you think that the Night Sky Prince has lost his mind and NT is complete garbage? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let your voice be heard in the comments below. And if you love Dissidia Final Fantasy, whether it's Duodecim, NT, Opera Omnia, or whatever crazy Latin phrase they decide to add to the next one as a subtitle, be sure to join our Facebook group, Ultima, Square Enix plus JRPGs, where your brave point counter is always glowing purple. Link in the description below.